Okay, okay, Julian. Welcome everybody. I can't see you, but I know you're all there. I can feel your presence, which is fantastic. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Julian Gough to the Limerick Literary Festival in honor of Kate O'Brien. Julian is an award-winning novelist, playwright, poet, musician, and scriptwriter. He was born in London, raised in Tipperary, studied English in Galway University, and now lives in Berlin. He's been writer-in-residence in Trinity College, University of Limerick, and Nanyang Technical University in Singapore. He sang with an underground literary pop band, Toasted Heretic, and had a top 10 hit in Ireland with the single Galway and Los Angeles. He won the BBC National Short Story Award in 2007 and was shortlisted for the Everyman Bollinger Woodhouse Prize twice. His poetry collection, Free Sex Chocolate, was published in 2010, and in 2013, he had a UK #1 Kindle single with his comic novella Crash. His Rabbit and Bear children's books, illustrated by Jim Field, are published in 26 languages. Apart from all that, Julian also wrote the ending to Time Magazine's Computer Game of the Year, the hugely popular Minecraft. His latest book is Connect, described by Emma Donoghue as a mind-expanding techno thriller with a hotly beating human heart. So you're very welcome, Julian. Very welcome indeed.
That sounds great.
Yeah, you sound like you've experienced a lot in life in lots of different genres.
I've been all over the place.
You have, yes, it's fantastic. And Julian,
squint, it looks like a career. It looks like a career. Yeah. Squint.
So I thought we could start with Connect, this amazing book. Okay. And maybe we could start just by asking you, Julian, what inspired you to write this book and how you would describe it?
There's never one answer to that kind of question. And the first bit, and writers are the worst possible people to describe their own books, is the second bit. But I always liked science fiction. As a child, science fiction was my favorite genre. And it was the thing that I really loved. And then I went to university and it completely threw me off course for decades because I was studying, Beowulf and Gawain and the Green Knight and Chaucer and literary criticism of all kinds. And it completely kind of threw me sideways. I got very into sort of Beckett and Joyce and these guys. And then eventually you sort of get Beckett and Joyce out of your system and you think, what do I actually like? No, I do really like Beckett. I totally disagree with him philosophically. I think he's one of those really interesting writers that's just a joy to read, wonderful. And I adore him, and he's completely wrong about everything. He's he's mistaken his own internal weather for the state of the universe, So I always enjoyed arguing with Beckett. But when I got that out of my system, I wrote a couple of very strange novels about a character called Jude, who was an orphan from Tipperary.
Behind me here.
Very peculiar books. The first one kind of deals with the early history of the novel. It's kind of riffing on Cervantes and Voltaire's Candide and things like that. And then the second one is modernism and postmodernism. And there's meant to be a third one, which is about the future of the novel, but I don't know what the future of the novel is, so it hasn't come out yet. But when I'd done all that and survived, processed the trauma of university, I thought, I really love science fiction. And I'd love to set something in the future, because Irish fiction is so, very understandably, Irish fiction is so obsessed with the past. And I thought, what would happen if I looked at the future instead, I thought something interesting might happen. Yeah.
Okay. Well, having said all that, then maybe to give the audience a flavor of the book, you might read a section from it for us.
Okay, I'll read a very short piece. Don't worry, because it's traumatic enough hearing writers read their stuff in person when at least you can kind of. Anyway, yeah, I will read you a short piece. There's a sort of narrator narrating the book, and who that narrator is not entirely clear, and I'm not going to clarify it for you either. You'd find out if you read the book, but it's quite clear from some of the reviews that the book got that they didn't read that far because they were misattributing quotes all over the place and completely failing to get to the end of the book. Anyway, there you go. That's reviews for you. But this is the narrator's voice rather than the characters that are running around inside the book. This planet is 5 billion years old. 5,000 million years. This year, it will change more than ever in its history. And next year, it will change even more than that. The technology, the social rules, the climate, everything. And you are here now. That's not a coincidence. Why has this planet suddenly generated 6, 7, 8 billion people? Bam, bam, bam. About as fast as your biology can do it. Generating the first billion people took 123 years. The second billion, no, wait a minute, the first billion took from the birth of the universe until AD 1804. That's how long it took. The second billion took 123 years. The third took 33 years. The fourth took just 14. Why does the Earth suddenly require so many people? Why did it suddenly switch you all on? Well, you'll see soon. That's why I'm telling you this particular story. But why did the guy writing this book set out to tell this particular story? Well, at his level, he's dimly aware that there is a problem with writers and writing, that novels aren't novel anymore. The new information about the universe, your life, you, isn't coming from fiction writers. It's coming from scientists and programmers and from the computers themselves. Coming at you, flowing through you in a wave of zeros and ones. The stories aren't always beautifully expressed, but they have the tremendous twin virtues of being new and true. So the guy writing this book is surprised and pleased to find that he's suddenly channeling the zeitgeist, that he's channeling me, that I'm telling this story instead of him. Because I can guarantee what he no longer can, this story is new and true. It will come true sooner than you think, sooner than he thinks, because evolution is accelerating. Nested, directed evolutions at the levels of language, ideas, materials, objects. And the rate at which evolution is accelerating is itself accelerating. And now you have access to your own genes. You can hack your own code, improve it, direct its evolution. Choose what you are from the atoms up. The curve gets exponential at this point, everything evolving at once. If you can say it, you can think it. If you can think it, you can do it. Hang on tight.
That gives a flavour of it, certainly. I will admit, you were talking about the people writing reviews, not getting to the end of the book, and I will happily admit that when I started it with the technical elements, I thought everything in the book was in the future, but my children quickly told me that I was just a dinosaur. However, it has a very technical side, and I think that what's really interesting about reading is that we sometimes dismiss all sorts of novels for lots of different reasons, for whether it's a murder, that I'm not going to read about that murder or something. And sometimes we'll dismiss science fiction. It's not my genre, which is a pity, because in this book in particular, there is a beautiful, developing, poignant relationship between Naomi and her son, Colt. Now, to me, that's the heart of the novel. Did you intend that to be the heart of the novel?
Yeah, it had to have a heart. It had to be about people, or it's not interesting. Because that's all that's that's all that's interesting. If it all has to be understood through our embodied selves. So I was fascinated by a kind of techno-utopianism. I think let me see now. I think someone might be here that knows a lot about this. I saw someone pop up that might know a bit about this. I think Mark O'Connor might be here. Anyway, Mark O'Connor wrote a very interesting book about this. There's this transhumanist project that we're all caught up in, whether we like it or not, whether we know anything about technology or not, that's coming out of Silicon Valley, and it's coming out of people like Ray Kurzweil. I think he works for Google now, but before that, he's a sort of techno-visionary. He wrote an amazing book called The Singularity is Near. And he thinks that some of the language out of the thing I read is essentially paraphrasing Ray Kurzweil. And he's talking about how the rate of change is the rate of acceleration of change is itself accelerating. So we're having this exponential hockey stick growth in change. And he's his thesis is essentially a religious one. He thinks we're going to achieve a singularity, a point of almost infinite acceleration of knowledge, and the universe will essentially explode into consciousness. That our task is to transcend our biological bodies and become consciousness at large, and transform the matter of the earth and of Mars and the stars into consciousness, into thinking matter. And it's an amazing book. I really, really enjoy it. It leaves a lot out. And it has its problems, but it is the philosophy that's behind Silicon Valley. If you talk to any of the really big tech companies that are really into transforming our lives, they've read that book. And so we've got this techno-utopian transhumanist religion that's leaking into every aspect of our lives, because the technologies are being designed using this religious framework. And we don't even know the religion exists. A lot of us, a lot of people, you probably haven't read Ray Kurzweil's book, I'm guessing. but it is affecting your life every single day. The algorithms that are on your phone were developed by engineers who read that book. So we're in this very strange moment, and it's a millenarian religion. It's a religion just like the early days of Christianity, when it was coming up to the year 1000 and everything was going to be over and people gave away their goods because we were approaching the singularity. Everything was going to be judged and finalized, and it didn't happen in the year 1000. And I don't think it's going to happen on Ray Kurzweil's time scale either. But if enough people believe it will, that has an effect on our lives, in our bodies on this planet. So I wanted to play with that. Yeah. I wanted to take his idea seriously and play with it, but also do it through a couple of actual human beings and say, but what does this mean for us? Yeah. Because I don't think he gets the human thing. He wants to live forever. He's put loads of money into living forever, into researching longevity, and he does a huge amount of playing around with his metabolism and supplements and that to try to live to the point where the technology will be able to get him an extra 100 years. And then if he gets that far, the technology he thinks will have advanced enough to get him another 1,000 years. And he thinks that those millions now living will never die. It's a completely millenarian religion, but it's totally technological. It's completely based in physics. Fascinating stuff. So there's a lot of that in the book.
Yeah, and if we put that onto Colt and his relationship with the game, playing the game, and the parallel universes basically, and then his relationship with his mother. But what was interesting is not just his relationship with his mother, but his relationship with his father. I just thought that the triangle there was really, really interesting. Good. So I was fascinated by that. And then just before you go on with that, we can focus on that 4-letter word, love.
Ah, yeah, there's a lot of love in it. I think somebody says at one point in the book, I think Naomi says it I should explain who these people are, because most of you will not have read the book. I see my sales figures. I know that most of you have not read the book. It's a cult book.
But I disagree with you, Julian. Oh, and really? I think the message we should send out today should be, this is not a cult book. Well, I mean, it can start, but I think it is a beautiful the ending would just blow you away, to use a cliche. But it's about love, it's about relationships, it's about our interaction with an ever-changing world. Yeah. So I don't think that's a cult book, and that's a pity if people see it as a cult book.
Okay, I think it was misunderstood. It's an odd book, and it was very hard to market it. I mean, if you look at the two covers for the hardback and for the paperback, they're aiming at completely different markets because they don't know how to sell it. They don't know how to tell people what this book is. It's a hard book to describe. It's like it's pretending to be one thing and it's actually another thing, and it's about stuff that doesn't normally go together. It's about religion and technology, which are not normally blended. The Naomi's she's a single mother bringing up her kid, but she's also she was also raised Catholic, so I put a lot of stuff in there because I can see the parallels between kind of Catholicism and techno-utopianism. They both want to transcend the body. They both have a kind of almost a contempt for our mucky little human lives on Earth, and I don't share that contempt. I think our mucky little human lives on Earth are it. They're the point. And I think Naomi says to Colt at one point, Colt has problems understanding people and understanding the world. He's a programmer, a hacker, he's a tech guy, and he retreats into the tech from the people because the people are mucky and complicated and messy and and he feels safer inside his helmet, inside his games, which he writes himself, so he has total control. But she's trying to explain to him life at one point, and she says that love is our interface with the universe. Love is a sign that you're connecting correctly with the universe, and I think that's actually literally true. If you've got a relationship with a child, and the key relationship in this book is between a mother and a child, between a child and a mother, because I think that doesn't get explored as much as it should, given how important that relationship is to absolutely everybody who's ever been born. I think we don't understand childhood, and we don't understand relationships between parents and children, particularly mothers and children. And we sentimentalize them, and we write about them either dismissively or sentimentally, but there's a lot of territory to be explored there. So I think love is a meaningful interface with the universe. If you bump into the Dalai Lama, there's an interface there. You think, oh, this is a guy who has tried to optimize his interface with the universe, and it's working. Like my brother works at Jampaling, the Buddhist retreat center in County Cavan, and he's met the Dalai Lama a bunch of times because of that. And anyway, you get hanging out with Buddhists, you think, oh, they're perfecting a technology that's very important. They're perfecting not technology, but they're perfecting they're trying to perfect an interface with the universe that the guys who are designing the Facebook interfaces are not trying to perfect. And there's a huge problem there that they aren't even aware of each other's technologies. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes. I can see all the interaction. Which really interests me is the element of risk in the novel as well. The idea, both from Colt's point of view and from Naomi's point of view, and then also from Ryan's point of view. This element of going to the edge. And in Colt's case, it's going to the edge to save his mother. And in his mother's case, it's really going to the edge and even putting her son in huge danger. I mean, there's a lot of danger and a lot of near death in the book, but counteracting all that is this love.
Yeah, I'm kind of.
So do you want to talk just something about?
Oh, you froze for a second, Vivienne. What was that?
Yeah, sorry. No, I just wanted to ask you, just if you want to talk about that element of risk in the novel, because it's not just a game of risk. It's real life risk along this journey of life.
Well, that's everything interesting happens right at the edge of chaos. Evolution happens at the edge of chaos. Our lives happen at the edge of chaos at every level, down to the cell. The interesting stuff is happening just when everything's about to fall apart, but it doesn't quite, but it might. So there's genuine risk in any learning experience. There's genuine risk in any life that you fully live. And what you can do with a thriller or with science fiction is you can make the metaphor really big. So what they're being eventually pursued by drones with artificial intelligence hooking them all together. There's a huge technological metaphor pursuing them that is just more dramatic than if you wrote a realist novel about someone's relationship with their phone. But essentially it's about your relationship with your phone and how you can lose your soul in your phone if you don't relate, if you're not aware of the risks of the technology. So, in a way, it's actually it's a big, sprawling, kind of adventurous, thrillerish, science fiction-ish book about what we're doing right now. What you choose to do today with your laptop or with your phone is your life. And the technologies are optimizing to fuck up your life. The technologies are optimizing to make you angry with people you've never met. And the technologies are embedded in structures, in algorithms, in programs, in corporations, in delivered through built technologies that will make more money for people very far away if you lose your temper and insult someone today. Because that will be much higher engagement, that your angry tweet will get retweeted and boosted to people that will be offended by it, and they will get back at you. And suddenly you're on the damn thing all day and your day is ruined, but someone has got more of your attention to push more adverts into your face. And this is a catastrophe, but it's an invisible catastrophe because it's not dramatic. So in a way, Connect is trying to dramatize these tiny domestic catastrophes where children are discovering sex through YouPorn, freely available on the internet, through a very large corporation that has bought up all the pornography sites and basically, there's a series of porn channels on the internet. They're all owned by one corporation. They're just different branding for different niches, right? And they have pirated pretty much all the porn that's out there and demonetized that industry. And it's all going to a tiny number of people that have basically no interest in your personal happiness. And it's changing the sex lives of ordinary human beings. If you have teenagers that learn about sex through, algorithmically pushed, ever more extreme porn clips, which are complete. Porn's decontextualized to begin with, and then you get a YouPorn, Pornhub, RedTube version of this that's decontextualizing the decontextualized sex of porn, and just it's incredibly bad for the developing personalities and characters, not just the sexualities of children, and they then end up having to navigate real world relationships, and the technology has fucked them up before their first kiss. And what do we do about it? No, so, love is really important, and technology is a war against love at the moment.
And in Connect, you have a very strong woman. Okay, and you also have Colt changing from being this very distant guy who works in a helmet or exists in a helmet to coming out through another character. Do you want to talk about Sasha? Because you're talking about porn. It just, I was trying to, with Sasha, she seems to, at the very beginning when we meet her, she's delivering pizza. We meet her before that, but in real life, whatever is real life, there's a tiny element of a sense of danger when she comes into the house, but that's a wonderful relationship, because obviously Colt moves on his journey through to changing his life or his approach to life through Sasha and through his mother, obviously.
Yeah, good. Oh, I'm really glad you like that. Yeah, well, one of the things, I took a long time to write this book. Like, it took me about 7 years to get it done. And in that time, I mean, early on in the process, my marriage had broken up. I was very depressed and not happy. And I sort of fell in love and got married during the writing of the book. So there's a lot of love in the book for that reason. Yeah. So in a way, some of the scenes there are charged by the emotions of my lived life as I was writing the book. So I'm glad that works. I mean, Sasha's wearing t-shirts that my wife wears. That kind of thing going on. So I'm glad that works for you. Yeah, because I think love is the most important thing. It's the most important thing, and and it's the most risky thing. And it's very, but guys are particularly bad at it, about love, and they're bad at the emotional work that goes into love, and they're bad at they want to be good at it, but they're not really helped by the way everything's sort of set up at the moment, or the way things were set up in the past. That certainly didn't help. It hasn't improved a lot for guys. Do you know what I mean? We're in a very weird situation. If you're a boy now, it's a very odd world, I think it's improved for girls. I have a son and a daughter, so and I was talking to my daughter once about she won't mind me telling you this. I was talking to my daughter once about we were talking about sexism and misogyny and the world and feminism and STEM, oddly enough, science stuff, and and she was saying that the only time she can remember any sexism explicitly stated in her life was when she was in kindergarten, and one of the other kids there, I think a girl, I'm not sure, said, "You can't wear a blue shirt, that's a boy's color." And she says that's literally the only time she can remember being pulled up for being a girl. Everything else was encouragement.
Oh, that's really good.
Oh, yeah, it's brilliant. It's amazing. I was like, wow, I'm pleased to hear it. You're encouraged to stick with maths, because girls can be just as, can be great at maths, and she'd stick with this and do that and do this, and you can do anything. And the message was always, you can do anything. And it was tremendously, and you were very encouraged to just, there was none of the stuff that would have happened 30 years ago if you were growing up in a convent school in Ireland, where there would have been quite a lot of messages that there was the stuff you couldn't do, or 50 years ago, or whatever,
Yeah, I don't want to change from that in one sense, except that I do want to refer to one part of the book. We don't have to refer to it explicitly, but your character Naomi is an incredibly strong woman, and she has to face the men in the book aren't very nice, apart from Colt, but she has to face Donnie and go through that horrendous experience with incredible bravery. Did
you like that scene? Did you think that scene worked towards the end there?
I thought that worked incredibly. I actually wasn't sure.
I really liked that scene, but it was difficult getting it through the editorial process.
Yeah, it's scary, really, really scary, but it's incredibly brave and powerful. But I mean, I've obviously feel I don't feel sorry for Donnie, though at the time I thought, I don't like killing anything, but not that I'm saying, I won't even mention killing, but sure. So what I was going to say to people listening is that the book is also a very, very powerful book about the strength of this woman character, so it is about, and the men come across, now, when nothing against Ryan, but Donnie, certainly. Do you want to say something about Donnie?
Well, he's a kind of guy that I went to school with a lot of them. I went to the Christian Brothers. Mm-hmm. Some of the teachers are like that. The world is changing. It's mm-hmm. changing a lot, and there's a way of being a guy that worked, but it only worked because only guys got to speak, and it just isn't going to work anymore. So we're going to have to re-engineer our society, but we're going to have to re-engineer it in a way that works for everybody, and we're going to have to re-engineer it in a way that works with our evolved biological selves, which unfortunately we can't change that. Unfortunately, Ray Kurzweil thinks we can. So anyway, but so it's going to be really tricky. It's going to be very interesting. Not every version of human society will work. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we're in this very experimental era. And Donnie's just a guy who doesn't want it to change. He just doesn't want it to change. And if you've watched, America, the book is set in America because I think that's an interesting place to set it. If you've seen, watched American politics over the last few years, there's a lot of Donnies. There's a lot of Donnies, and they don't want the world to change. And they are very resentful of the change, even though the change would liberate them, even though the change would actually give them more satisfying lives. But they can't find a way through. You could imagine, like, if everything went wrong for Colt, he could end up like Donnie, and that's what you don't want to happen, and that's what Naomi doesn't want to happen. That's what I don't want to happen, because I've got a son. I don't want him to end up like Donnie. So, so some of the books about that, it's about.
But it's hopeful. Your book, Julian, is not. We often see science fiction books, if we can call this only science fiction, we often see them as being about the future, and the future's doomed and everything's going to be awful and we're all going to become robots and be taken over by robots and die, basically. But this is not this is a very hopeful book, and the ending in particular, and I don't want to spoil the book for people by the ending, but the ending is something that just is beautiful.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I was happy with the ending. Yeah, I'm really glad. No, I love science fiction, and science fiction used to be a more hopeful genre. And I think it's really only in the last few decades, it's become so dystopian. Like everything is, so many successful science fiction books and television series that start with the end of the world, basically, and then just rub your face in it for a while. And I don't think it's accurate. I don't think it's accurate. I mean, I could go into my own theories of the universe here because they're kind of lying behind the book, but I have quite an optimistic feeling about the universe and our place in it. You know, I think it's meaningful to be a human being. I think we're part of something that is far bigger than us, and we have a meaningful role to play. It might not be the most important role in the universe, but it's the most important role at our scale. It's better to be a human being than an octopus. It's better to be a human being than a wasp. You know, it's much more interesting, and you can and you're more important because you can do stuff that transforms the base material of the world into something new. You know, we can conceptualize a hot air balloon and build it and fly in it. We can conceptualize a rocket that goes to the moon, which science fiction did long before that was possible, and long before that was believed to be even technically possible. There's New York Times articles from the 1940s saying it's completely physically, technically impossible to ever go to the moon. You know, they didn't know what they were talking about. Science fiction writers knew what they were talking about. So but how are we going to transform the world and ultimately the solar system and maybe the galaxy? And you know, we might be. I mean, it's unlikely. I don't think we're the only spark of consciousness and life in the universe. And in fact, I think the universe is conscious through us and probably a ton of other weird creatures on a ton of other planets. But it's meaningful to be the conscious node at this little point on this bit of dust in this vast universe. That's an amazing thing. How can you get depressed about this? How can you be gloomy when of all the matter, look around you, look at the mountains, look at the apartment blocks made out of concrete, look at all the matter in the universe, and you happen to be alive and self-conscious and able to conceptualize a future and build towards it. Wow, you know, even if it meant nothing, it would be amazing, but I actually even think it means something. I think it's how the universe comes into being. I think the universe is I'll tell you what, I think the universe is an evolved organism that is coming into being, and we're part of that.
And actually, that's
pure physics. It's pure, you don't need to add anything. There's a theory by Lee Smolin, he's a physicist who came up with a theory called cosmological natural selection 20, 30 years ago, which has not taken off because he came up with a theory that needed a new field, that created a new field, but there was no field for it to be planted in. So it was published, his first paper was published in a what was it, a quantum gravity journal. Nobody reads that. Even the quantum gravity guys don't really get to the end of the quantum gravity journals. So it didn't really take off. And then he wrote a book for Oxford University Press, expanding on it, which is a really great book in terms of content, but he takes 200 pages to get to the point because he writes like a scientist, and I don't think anybody got to the end of that book either. But if you did, it's mind-blowing. And if the universe is an evolved entity, and everything we've discovered over the last 20 or 30 years since that theory was published makes it look like it's behaving like an evolved entity that is developing, then we're part of it. And we're an important part of it because a lot of energy goes into making a human being. You know, a lot of time goes into making a human being. And isn't that nice?
And that's a really good way of getting onto your children's books.
Okay.
because it's almost like your bear, Julian.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm a bit rabbit as well, to be honest. If you got me on a grumpy morning, I'm a bit rabbit.
But it's just when you talk about the energy it takes to make a human being, it's what Rabbit tells Bear, the energy it takes.
I got rabbit into that first book, didn't I? Yeah.
Yeah. So he put so these are these wonderful bear. Are they bear and rabbit? Yes. Rabbit and Bear. Sorry,
Yeah.
Rabbit and Bear. The wrong way around.
Bear and Rabbit and Bear.
Beautiful, beautiful, and gently educational books. So maybe you could tell, because to me, the element in those books is very much at the center of Connect. So if people, you know, you can read those children's books with the same idea, this love and friendship.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I would say that, like, I studied philosophy for 3 years back in the day in Galway, and I was a very bad student because I was putting all my energy into my band, into Toasted Heretic, but some of it stuck, and I kind of kept up a little bit with philosophy over the years, and there's probably a level at which I think my true job, if I had to admit it, is that I'm a sort of a shit philosopher. I'm a garage philosopher. That's a phrase that I've seen used about Philip K. Dick. That seems fair. I'm a garage philosopher. So I very slowly evolved a kind of a worldview that works for me, and I think makes some kind of sense, and makes life better, helps me navigate life. And so the children's books in particular, I'm trying to tell children things that I wish I'd known when I was their age that will help make their lives easier. And sometimes I'm trying to tell the parents things that I wish my parents had known at that age as well, because the parents read the books to the kids, and sometimes there's two messages going on at the same time there. So yeah, I would say almost the key word for the Rabbit and Bear books is philosophy. Yeah, that each book, I'm trying to help the kids to navigate a problem, and often it's by taking a philosophical approach, whether it's from Stoicism or Buddhism or something more complex. I don't know, Richard Rorty, Nietzsche. I don't know. There's a lot of different philosophers in there. Yeah. So yeah, child again, my obsession with childhood. I honestly think we should rebuild our entire society around childhood and protect childhood and get it right as much as we can in our imperfect knowledge. Help parents be better parents. Help children be better children. Because everything you try to fix after that is too fucking late. Trying to fix the prison system, that's 20 years too late. Yeah. I've taught in prisons, and you look at those guys and think, childhood. Where did it all go wrong? Childhood. They hadn't got a chance.
They should have met Bear.
I wish they'd met Bear. Well, hopefully their kids will meet Bear. The hope is that they'll get out of prison and they have a kid, or they'll have a kid, and they'll get a Rabbit and Bear book, and the kid will, and the parent will learn something that will help the kid not turn into the parent. So yeah, yeah. And then you put in a lot of high quality fart jokes to disguise the fact that it's a philosophy book. Yeah.
In Rabbit's Bad Habits, there's a in your little introduction, you talk about your daughter when you were reading it to her. You left out a line that you had to put back in. But that was brilliant.
Yeah, she was my editor. Yeah, she was my editor on that book. She was she was about 6, I suppose, when I was reading a book and I didn't like it. It was very boring. It was given to us by a relative, and I didn't think it was any good. And I started editing it out loud while reading it, which you shouldn't do with your 6-year-old. But I was editing an adult novel at the time, and I was in editing mode, and I was reading it. This is really annoying me. I was like, there's nothing going on here. There's no kind of conflict. There's nothing to pull you through. These characters are completely interchangeable. If you could just swap their lines, it wouldn't make any difference. It doesn't matter, So my daughter started throwing in suggestions, and there was a third animal arrived that was exactly the same as the first two, even though it was a different kind of animal. It didn't matter. And she was saying, oh, if a wolf arrived instead, then the wolf could chase the rabbit, and then that would be exciting. And I was you're totally right. So we invented a new story, and then I would do a new draft of it. She went to sleep that night, and I went off and wrote it down. This is a great story. And at one point I read her a draft, and she burst into tears. Yeah, she was crying. I couldn't work out why she was crying, because it was a very funny scene, I thought. and she was like weeping into her hands, and I was like, why are you crying? What's wrong? And she said, and she was so disgusted with me, she wouldn't look me in the eye. She was like, oh, you've taken out my favorite line. Yeah, and she was totally right. I made a stupid editorial decision. I took out.
But tell us the line. It's brilliant.
Well, it's only funny in context, but in the context of the scene where the wolf has, been trying to eat the rabbit and is thinking of converting to vegetarianism after not catching the rabbit, was saying, I'm sick of my dinner running away from me at 40 miles an hour. That was the line. And it was a good line. It went back in. Yeah.
Very good line. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a good editor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So you were writing the stories as she was growing up. So it's a joint venture, really.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally. Yeah, she's a big influence. I still give her my books to read. I mean, when she was very young, I would give her a draft to read, and I would sit kind of at 90 degrees to her and just watch her face from the side as she read it, because I could tell which lines were good and which lines were bad from her face. It was completely transparent how the book was going, when she was bored, when she was amused, when she was like excited. That was a really great fun. And now she's she's much older now. She's 16 now, so I would still give her drafts, but now she actually gives me actual feedback. She'll write notes on it, or she'll tell me what she thinks, and she's a very good editor.
That's great.
She still catches things, like she'll look at proofs, like she sees each stage and she'll say, the tortoise shouldn't open his eyes on this page. She'll go really into the nitty gritty of weaving the words and the pictures together, because Jim Field does the pictures. Jim Field's a genius illustrator. But she's like, tortoise shouldn't open his eyes on this page because rabbit thinks he's a snake at this point. And if he opens his eyes, it's clear that he's the tortoise. So if he opens his eyes on the next page, rabbit will then, when it's revealed that he's not a snake, it's more effective. And she's right. And I didn't catch it. Jim didn't catch it. My editor didn't catch it. And I tell my editor, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. We do it." And every now and again, I buy her a new bicycle because I really owe it. Yeah.
I could go on talking about the children's books, but I might ask you at this stage just about
one of my best books. Like
they're fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I have just a grandson, but he's a bit too young yet, though he loves the pictures. I just think what's interesting about the theme that we're of this year's festival, which is the writer at home and abroad. And what I was going to ask you is, you are in Berlin, and has the pandemic or the COVID-19 affected the way you write, or do you continue to write in your special place? In other words, your craft, Julian.
Yeah, okay, the craft side of it. Oh, yeah.
The craft
people actually care about what pen do you use.
Yeah.
Which I'm fascinated by. I'm really obsessed with other writers. Tech. We're like, I think pandemics have affected my kind of writer less than they've affected almost anybody else on earth, except maybe monks. Because I always just sat on my own in a small space going mad and making up stories about people that don't exist. And my clubbing years are long behind me, Vivienne. So it hasn't had a huge effect in some ways. I mean, there's no live festivals. There's no the stuff that made me. I used to be forced to socialize by the job, because I would go to festivals and be on panels and give readings and go to libraries and stuff. That's all disappeared. So I am more in my own little mental space than before, but that kind of suits me. So it sounds, to say this sounds completely heartless, because I understand how much suffering is going on and how much suffering has been caused by this pandemic, but I have been saved from that. I have not really, I can't say I've suffered. It's you do go nuts trying to work in the house with a 2-year-old, which is where we're at right now. Like, we're both writers and we have a 2-year-old, and it's a little tiny flat in Berlin. And it's like, so I do actually commute to a little corner of a room, a couple of miles away. But I love that because I get to cycle on my mountain bike, and there's no one around. And I went to work on Sunday recently in the snow, and I go off path as much as I can. If there's a bit of park, I'll bump along through the trees and that. And but I was going down a main road in Berlin, and I could see, because it snowed lightly the night before, that I was only the 3rd bicycle that day on a Sunday in the lockdown. It's like the Amiga Man or something. Sometimes it's like you're in an End of the World movie. Yeah, it's loosening up a little bit now, but my personality that doesn't mind that, but you do feel guilty about how lucky you are, you know.
Mm.
But not that guilty. Why?
No, no.
I didn't do it. You know, it's not my fault. But I am aware that, like, my parents haven't been able to, you know, they've been under lockdown in Ireland, in Tipperary, for a fucking year. It's like, and my dad's so sociable. It's like, it's not fair, you know. It's tough. Yeah.
Before we take some questions, I know there are some questions. I just wanted to ask you, because I know we talked about this, what writers have influenced you. I know you were going to have some sort of books maybe in the background, or always interested in what people are reading.
You asked me to pile out some books. What am I reading? I just grabbed a fairly random selection. They're never random. You leave out the embarrassing ones.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm reading tons of nonfiction, and I'm reading tons of research stuff. So it might not be interesting, but I'll show you some of the things I'm reading. This is a book called High Weirdness by Eric Davis, and it's about Philip K. Dick, the science fiction writer, and Terence McKenna, the strange mushroom and psychedelics philosopher, who also predicted the end of the world in a sort of escalating apocalypse, but in 2012, and so he was wrong. And it's also about oh, my brain is just fried. Where's Jeffrey Cross? Oh my God, I just flipped this open. It just reminded me of like 3 other books that I should probably mention. But yeah, Robert Anton Wilson. Robert Anton Wilson is another garage philosopher, and I really love him. So I've been carrying this book around so much that my wife now greets me with the words, "Hi, weirdness." Hi, weirdness. Yeah, I like that book. It was somebody's thesis or something, but it turned into a really loopy book about it. So it's about these 1970s, 80s psychedelic voyagers, psychonauts, and how consensual reality broke down in the 70s and 80s, which is clearly the case, and how they navigated it and how they helped create that breakdown and what the consequences were. Because some of those guys were involved in some very weird stuff. That Robert Anton Wilson wrote a trilogy called Illuminatus that was very, very influential, in which all conspiracy theories are true. It's set in a world where every single conspiracy theory is true. You know, JFK assassination, all of those theories. He was assassinated by everybody you think might have assassinated him. You know, it's a very entertaining book, but it's horribly prescient, because the destabilized reality where everybody that we live in is very like Illuminatus. So anyway, I like that. Okay, I'm going to have to move faster through these books. How to Take Smart Notes. That's because I'm reading so many books. I need to take better notes. That's a very good book by Sunke Arns. And it's really helping me. I'm adapting a system that I won't start talking about, of organizing my information through an app called Rome Research. It actually organizes your thoughts the way you think, unlike every other thing out there, because we're again, the technology traps our thoughts inside hierarchical, folder-based structures that do not map onto the way we think. So Rome Research is fantastic. It's this new way of connecting all your thoughts together in a non-hierarchical way that's as chaotic as the way I actually think. So I'm in love with that. Transcend. This is a great book. Highly recommend it. The New Science of Self-Actualization. It's by Scott Barry Kaufman, and it's a biography of Maslow, the guy who's only remembered now for the pyramid of, mostly remembered for the pyramid of, you know, the hierarchy of needs that get met. You know, you got to feed yourself, and then you got to find, you know, a house, and then love, and then eventually you can fulfill yourself. Anyway, he's a much more complicated and interesting thinker than the pyramid would indicate. And this is a book that's kind of about his life, but also about his thought and how it hasn't been quite understood. It's a really wonderful book about fulfilling your potential as a human being. The rorty reader. I carry this around so much that my son, who's 2, one of his first words was rorty. He'd go, rorty-o, rorty-o, and he'd pick up the book and bring it to me. So I've really screwed with his head, and he's only 2. I hope he could recover. It's the philosopher Richard Rorty. Very interesting philosopher, very useful in our times. Very interesting on, I think, a lot of the problems we have now. He, as a philosopher, addressed them 20, 30 years ago, and we really need to rediscover his ideas, because we're having a lot of unnecessary arguments, because we're having political and personal fights on the same plane, we're having these philosophical arguments about how society should be organized and how we should live on the same plane, and then they can't be made to become one philosophy. So I think a huge amount of unnecessary psychological warfare on places like Twitter would be fixed if everybody read Richard Rorty and understood him, but he's a bit dense. So I'll have to write a children's book version of Richard Rorty.
Should we take some questions on after that? I hope I can do this.
They're a bit heavy. Feeling Like a Kid. That's a nice book on children's literature. And Ottoman Odyssey, Scott, about the Ottoman Empire.
Okay.
And so on. And so on.
Are questions coming up on your screen, Julian?
Oh, are they? Oh, I hit the Q&A. Oh, hello. Yeah, there are. Oh, Grace Sampson saying that the beautiful thing is there's more and more space in our current climate for incredibly experimental books and works now. We just can't get enough of the hybrid written genres. I agree. I mean, the big, basically, I love that. Who the hell said that? That every great book creates a new genre. I think we're definitely creating new genres. There's really wonderful books out there. Yeah. Little Labours, that's a beautiful book. Little Labours, did you read that? It's a lovely book about motherhood and children. Oh, you have it? Show it to the people. I love that book.
I can find it here. Yep.
That's another, yes, that's the, I have that edition too. It's lovely, isn't it?
It's thanks to Julian that I have this. I was taught by Julian at the MA in Creative Writing. Fantastic.
Did you like it? Yeah.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's on my pride of place. Right on my desk.
Good. That's great. Okay, I'll go through the questions. Enjoyed Connect. Hi, Geraldine Cronin. Hi, Geraldine. Enjoyed Connect. Occasionally too technical for me, but very clever. Thank you. Yeah, just I think read the tech stuff like it's some sort of weird poetry, like weird concrete poetry or something. You don't have to understand it all. It does actually make sense. I did a lot of research, but there's definitely more than a lot of people need. But read it like weird Martian poetry and just get through it. You're allowed to skip as well. I'm fine with skipping. Will there be another Rabbit and Bear? Yes, there will. Yes, there will be. I've delivered one to Jim, who's doing the pictures. And it's called A Bad King is a Sad Thing. And it's actually kind of the scariest one yet, but it has a happy ending, so it's going to be all right. And that one took me a couple of years to write because I was trying to solve problems that I'd had in my childhood that I had not been able to solve in my childhood. So it's about difficulties encountered in childhood that are genuinely difficult to deal with. Because the earlier Rabbit and Bear books, love and compassion and empathy tend to solve the problems. And sometimes you encounter people or situations where those do not solve the problems. So how the hell do you deal with those? So it's kind of another level up of difficulty. And I'm very proud of the book. I really like it. It's the best answer I could come up with on how you deal with, what do you do when the Nazis come? What do you do when King Leopold lands on your shores and enslaves you? What do you do when the bad thing happens? What do you do when you're dealing with someone in the playground who is so messed up you can't get through? Okay. You said before you wanted to be a musician. Tom Corcoran asking this, that you wanted to be a musician in your 20s, a writer in your 30s, and make films in your 40s. In an ideal world, would you like to bring Connect to the screen? Oh yeah, I kind of went off making films because I think for various reasons, I won't go into that, boring. But yeah, I'd love to see Connect brought to the screen. I am actually talking to a lovely man from that world about it, but it's a million years away from actually becoming a real thing on TV. So it's not even worth talking about, but it's not, I would think it would work very well, I think on TV.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it would work very well. Yeah,
I was actually inspired by in some ways more by great scripts than by great novels on that one. I love Alien, amazing film, and I love Terminator 2. They're two great films with really strong female heroes as well. Alien and Terminator 2. They're both about they're both about women and motherhood and fear of motherhood, and they're very interesting films. So I was quite inspired by films. So I would love to see it ultimately on screen. Yeah. Do you get to have a working relationship with Jim Field, or is it all through an editor? Well, it started off through an editor, but artists, artists just sneak off behind the bike shed and chat about what they shouldn't. And so now we've got a direct relationship. Yeah, it's lovely. I was in Paris for the last book, And we were able to stand side by side in the studio and go over all the pictures together and the text together and just do really fine tuning on it. And I think that really worked for the book. And we did a lot of very fine tuning on this one as well. I couldn't go to Paris this year because there's a pandemic. But yeah, I love Jim. We get on very, very well now. Yeah.
I just wanted to hold up some of an illustration.
Oh, show Jim's pictures. Yeah.
They're just beautiful. Can you see that?
Oh yeah. The light. That's a lot of that is from Yosemite, because he went on holidays in Yosemite a few years ago and was just blown away by it and took a lot of photos.
They're fabulous. They're fabulous.
Yeah, he's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful illustrator. Yeah, I love working with him.
I can't see the questions, Julian, but we're coming
close.
Q&A
down the bottom. Go down the bottom and there's Q&A. If you know
So, but
Robert,
I'm just
Robert from Tokyo. What time is it in Tokyo? Julian, whenever I talked to Buddhist monks, I was always surprised. Oh, it's gone. Where's it gone? Come back. I didn't answer it.
Hold on.
Is it gone? Oh well. Sorry, Robert. I'll answer it some other time.
If you go into answered, you should be able to see it.
Huh?
Sorry, that was my fault.
Where'd it go?
If you scroll down, so there's 3 screens: open, answered, and dismissed. So there at the bottom. Whenever I talk to, can you see it?
Oh, it's at the bottom of answered. Whenever I talk to Buddhist monks, I was always surprised that the secret, if you will, to their knowledge of the universe seemed to be an absolute openness and acceptance of the way things are. Listening to your ideas earlier, I was wondering if you would agree that the acceptance, the openness is pretty much a definition of love, what you call our interface with the universe. Yeah. There's a big Buddhist thing. Accepting the universe is kind of loving the universe, but there's also this Western thing where love is a little bit more stern in the West. There's a bit of judgment involved. I think there's massive truth in both of them, and they're not mutually exclusive. I think reality is so goddamn complicated. There's no single answer. Buddhism has some beautiful answers to a huge range of questions, but the West has some very interesting answers too. And there are things that a Buddhist view of the universe will not achieve. And there are things that a technological or Western or Richard Rorty view of the universe will not achieve. But it's beautiful to be able to move between them all. But I think, there's a lot of acceptance and love overlap. Yeah, I do. But there are things that you shouldn't love. There are things, sometimes things are not good. And you can accept them, but not love them. You can accept them, but actually resist them because they have to be resisted, because they are not good for the universe. But but it's very difficult to know where to stand to make that judgment. And Buddhism is very good at reminding you, you don't know enough and you're not good enough to be the judge, Man, I guess it's infinitely complicated, and we're just these little tiny bits of matter that are aware of ourselves. It's amazing we can fucking think it all. So let's cut ourselves some slack. Buddhism, good. Love, good.
Okay, I think Ella, while you're in the background there, I think we're coming to the end, are we?
We have a few more questions. There's just 3 or 4 more questions.
Okay.
We have.
I'll go through faster.
Yeah, no, the next event isn't until 2:00, so we have maybe an extra 10 minutes that we can allow ourselves if people can stay.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Oh, Valerie O'Connor. Oh, yeah. Hi, Valerie. Oh, I'm glad I helped you. Okay. I'm blocking the confusion on settling with genre. Yeah. Genre is an industry category. Do what you have to do, and then we'll worry about genre later. That's the marketing department's problem. Write your book. Anyway, yeah. Don't get trapped inside a genre if it's not comfortable for you. The best books will blow open the genre or expand it or collide it with something else and make something new. So don't worry about it too much. So you're now embracing writing a children's book with my son, who's an illustrator. Lovely, among other projects. Is it very important that the kids' book have an issue to overcome? Well, just issue. I don't like the word issue in some ways. It has to be about something. It has to be about something that matters. As long as it's about something that matters, it'll be good. Children have a lot of things they need to deal with and they need to understand. And you can either be solving a problem for them or explaining something to them that they, there's a lot of, they don't know much and they want to know everything. So you've got an enormous field of possibilities, but it just has to be about something. I don't want to overcomplicate it. Paul, thank you for the great communicator. Well, thank you. Roy, that's nice. I hope I communicated something. Fergus, hi Julian, could you have written these books if you'd stayed in Ireland from one immigrant to another? I don't know if I could. I don't think so. I would have written different books. It might have been fine. There's a bunch of there's a bunch of reasons Irish writers leave Ireland. One is Ireland's very, very small. Another is and it's easier to see Ireland from outside sometimes. And also it can feel like you can't fully tell the truth about everything when you're inside Ireland, because it's such a village that you're going to offend people, and it's easier just be yourself and say what you have to say if you're outside it, I think, sometimes. Not everyone has that problem, but some people, I think, find it easier to just fully express themselves when they're not going to bump into their aunt the next day in the shop. And also, the more of the world you see, the more of the world you have available to play with. So I'm glad I lived in Singapore for 6 months, and I'm glad I have lived in Berlin. I'll probably come back to Ireland because I kind of love it in an irritated kind of way. But yeah. Cormac, love this discussion. Thank you. And your thoughts on place in the universe, but personally still going to be gloomy. Yeah, no, it's okay. You can be gloomy. There's a lot to be gloomy about, and there are lots of ways of looking at the world where gloom is totally justified, and I'm not going to criticize you for it. I'm just a big fan of Robert Anton Wilson's theories of reality tunnels, which I think he got from Leary, the LSD psychologist at Harvard, who got kicked out of Harvard. That we look at the world through reality tunnels, and those tunnels filter out most of reality. And you will experience the world that your tunnel is set up to see. You're looking at the world down a pipe. But there's a huge number of potential pipes to look down. And if you can get into the habit of looking down at different pipes on different occasions, of getting the hang of a lot of different reality tunnels, you will have a much more flexible way of dealing with existence. Buddhism is a great reality tunnel to look at the world through. Techno-utopianism is a reality tunnel. And if you look through that tunnel, it's an interesting one. There's a lot of very depressing reality tunnels. That's why I found Beckett, I disagreed with Beckett. I thought he's giving people a reality tunnel that's actually very depressing. So I would look down the tunnel, but I wouldn't believe in it. I wouldn't believe it was the best view. Yeah, people take it. Valerie saying people take access to you whenever they want to, call you out on things you've written. Yeah, it's a funny time to write because you're very exposed, because everything gets taken out of context, and a line you write can be used to just beat the shit out of you, and it's not seen in the context of the book, which is seen in the context of all the works, which is seen in the context of the life, which is the only real way to understand it. But we're not God. We can't do all the research necessary to contextualize a sentence in a life. So we just rush to judgment, but we're usually wrong. I've spent a lot of time, because I try to understand the world we live in, I've spent a lot of time digging into, like, when people say something that absolutely awful that gets them cancelled on Twitter, and then maybe they lose their job or whatever. If it's possible to follow them socially and just quietly sit with them for a while, it's really, really interesting. I've read people who were really attacked for saying or doing something in a context where it was complete, it was like, oh my God, what a terrible person saying such a terrible thing. And then you live with them for a while, and you discover their terrible childhood and their very difficult life, and you can sort of see where the comment came from in the context of the life, and you don't feel anger towards them at all anymore. You just feel compassion. If we had time to do that, it'd be beautiful. Why doesn't someone build an app for that?
Just on the word compassion, it would be lovely, Julian, to end this session, which has been absolutely fantastic. I'm sorry to have to end this session at all. I could go on listening to you and talking to you all day. However, we have a time constraint. You wrote a beautiful poem about Leonard Cohen, another man filled with compassion. I think, am I right that Leonard Cohen was a Buddhist?
He was, yeah. He spent years as a monk up a mountain, up
right.
Baldy in California. Yeah. He really went for it.
Yeah, he really went for it. So I just think for Julian to read from his poem Hot Take, or read the poem Hot Take, would be a wonderful way to end the session. But I just want to say thank you very much, Julian, for coming to us from Berlin. And it has been an absolute pleasure. And I hope we can meet in the real world over a real cup of coffee on a real chair and a real table.
I'd love it. I'd love it, Vivienne.
Yeah.
I'd love it. That'd be great.
So, thank you very much. Thank you. And so we would, Julian's going to read Hot Take, and thank you. And thank you everybody for listening. Please go and buy all the Rabbit and Bear books, which are just fantastic, and buy Connect. Do not be put off by any genre restrictions.
Thanks.
Thank you, Julian.
I've really enjoyed it, Vivienne. Thank you very much. It's lovely talking to you again. And good luck with your own work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
John, do I think the current Irish writing atmosphere is healthy and active? Yeah, it's very healthy, very active. Interesting things are happening. And will I come back to join it? I will at some point. Yeah. The salmon swim back up river to spawn. I will go back. Thanks, Tom. Thank you for your thanks as well. Okay, I'll read the poem. It's called Hot Take because I wrote it. I heard Leonard Cohen had died in the morning I was heading off to an airport, and I kind of wrote the poem on the way to the airport. And there's an irony in giving a hot take on a guy who spent so much time on every word. So, and so this is the poem. You can't explain poems. They are what they are. Leonard Cohen has ceased to exist as a thing in this world, and yet he continues to exist. I can see his face when I close my fist. His words just came out of my mouth like this. I have tried in my way to be free. I believe in him like Jesus, both Jewish guys who suffered and performed their suffering in the hope it would help others, in the hope it would help them to transcend. Both singing at the end, hallelujah. Now here on a train in dirty dawn light with an iPhone and an hour before my flight, as his name starts to trend, tapping Gorilla Glass on the porn-smudged screen of a pink iPhone at 6:46 a.m. A poet? A prophet? All wrong. A lover? A cleric? No. Who am I to sum up a man who could spend 15 years writing a song 5 minutes long that will outlive America? So, in the terminal building, I take out my sandwiches. They've leaked tears of honey on my book, my harmonica. I wipe them down with a serviette. Approaching the bright orange EasyJet plane, I finish my poem and whisper his name. And I play the sweet harmonica by the thrumming engine of the jet. As Leonard Cohen's body warms the world, I board my flight. We leap into the sky, up through low clouds and into light. Thanks a million for turning up, and good luck with your lives. It's a difficult time, but love is a good interface. It's good guidance. See if you can work on that. Might guide you right.